I left town for 1 week. HOA demolished my house. Then a judge ordered $8 million in damages. Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, we would like to ask you for one small favor. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you will not miss any of our latest videos. It only takes a moment, costs nothing, and is one of the best ways to help us continue creating powerful, emotional, and dramatic stories like this one. Your support means more to us than you can imagine. Also, let us know where you are watching from today. Share your city or country in the comments below. Thank you so much. Now let us return to our main character. They didn't just tear down my house, they scheduled it around my return. That was the thought that hit me when I turned onto Caldwell Road and saw a yellow excavator standing where my family home had been for 57 years. I came back on Wednesday afternoon, 2 days earlier than planned. The truck slowed beneath me, tires grinding over loose gravel, while sunlight poured through a space that had never been empty in my lifetime. The white farmhouse was gone. The porch where my grandfather drank coffee every morning was gone. The brick chimney, the kitchen windows, the oak beam above the fireplace. All of it had been crushed into a gray field of splintered lumber and broken concrete. For several seconds, I forgot to breathe. The excavator's engine rumbled at idle. Hydraulic lines hissed beneath its steel arm. A loose sheet of roofing scraped across the rubble with a thin metallic scream. Then the smell reached me. Diesel exhaust, freshly broken pine, wet plaster, and burned electrical wire. I had left town 7 days earlier for a restoration job in Nashville. Before I left, the roof was solid, the windows were locked, and my father's red-handled hammer still hung above the garage workbench. Now half the garage lay beneath the excavator's tracks. I stopped my truck in the middle of the driveway and stepped out. Shut it down. The operator turned inside the cab. The steel bucket froze above what remained of my living room. Muddy water dripped from its teeth and struck a shattered floorboard below. A man in an orange vest climbed down, boots landing heavily in the dust. "You can't be on this site," he said. I stared at him. "This is my home." His eyes shifted toward a white construction trailer parked beside the property line. "You need to speak with the HOA. That sentence landed harder than the machine. My property bordered Willow Creek Estates, but it had never belonged to their association. My grandfather had refused every covenant, amendment, and community improvement agreement they sent him after the subdivision was built around our land. He called them paper bullies. I walked past the foreman. Glass cracked beneath my boots. Pink insulation clung to the rose bushes my grandmother planted before I was born. A blue ceramic mug lay broken near the foundation, its handle separated cleanly from the rest. My mother gave me that mug the year before she died. I crouched and picked up the handle. A few feet away, something red protruded from beneath a fractured cabinet door. My father's hammer. The wooden grip was scarred with shallow cuts he had carved so it wouldn't slip in summer heat. I pulled it free and wiped gray dust from the steel head. That hammer had helped build the porch. Now I was holding it in the ruins. Behind me, tires hissed over asphalt. A white Lexus SUV turned into the driveway and stopped just outside the rubble. The driver's door opened, and Vanessa Whitmore stepped out in cream slacks, polished heels, and a fitted jacket too clean for a demolition site. She was 53, blonde, white, and perfectly composed. The kind of woman who could deliver a threat with the smile of someone offering dessert. President of Willow Creek Estates, HOA. Her perfume reached me before her voice did. "Ethan," she said, "you weren't supposed to be back until Monday." The foreman looked at her. So did I. For 1 second, Vanessa's expression slipped. Not because she was surprised my home had been demolished, because she was surprised I had returned early. She recovered quickly and removed a thick envelope from her handbag. "Your property was declared abandoned and structurally unsafe," she said. "The board authorized emergency demolition." I looked at the envelope, then at the excavator, then at the woman standing on my land as if she had already purchased it. "What board?" "The Willow Creek board." "My land isn't part of Willow Creek." Her smile tightened. "It is now." The air tasted like concrete dust and metal. I opened the envelope. Inside was a demolition order carrying my address, a county seal, and 6 months of supposed violation notices. The dates had been spread across half a year, but every delivery record showed the documents entering the mail system during the 7 days I was gone. At the bottom was a certified mail receipt. Someone had signed for the final notice using the name Walter Caldwell. My grandfather, dead for 6 years. Vanessa stepped closer. "You have 48 hours to remove the debris," she said. "After that, the HOA will place a lien on the lot and begin transfer proceedings." I closed the envelope. She had timed the demolition, faked the warnings, forged a dead man's signature, and somehow known exactly when I planned to return. Then I noticed a rusted metal corner beneath a broken floor joist. My grandfather's tin box. I pulled it from the rubble and felt papers shift inside. Vanessa watched me hold it against my chest, but she didn't understand what it was. She thought the excavator had erased my family's claim. She thought I was standing there with nothing but a broken hammer and a pile of debris. What she didn't know was that Walter Caldwell had never trusted developers, county seals, or anyone who arrived with paperwork they wanted signed quickly. Vanessa had demolished the house, but she had left the foundation of her own destruction buried underneath it. The tin box sat on the passenger seat while Vanessa kept talking behind me. Deadlines, cleanup costs, transfer procedures. She used the language of administration because it made destruction sound orderly. I placed my father's hammer beside the box and shut the truck door. Then I turned back toward the ruins. "My name is Ethan Caldwell. I was 41 years old, a structural restoration contractor, and the 4th generation of my family to call that house home. I spent my life repairing buildings other people had abandoned. Courthouses with rotten joists, churches split open by storms, farmhouses leaning so badly the doors would no longer close. I knew what structural failure looked like. My house had not failed. 3 months earlier, I had replaced the roof. In May, the county approved a new electrical panel. The western foundation had been reinforced with 12 steel piers after a dry summer opened a crack beneath the dining room window. I had receipts for every nail, photographs of every repair, inspection reports carrying the same county seal now stamped across the demolition order in my hand. Vanessa knew all of that. She had complained about every contractor who entered my driveway. She called my work trucks commercial clutter. She called the scaffolding a visual nuisance. Once, she mailed me a violation notice because a stack of cedar boards was visible from Willow Creek's entrance for 6 hours. The notice had no legal force. My land was outside the HOA. But Vanessa never cared where her authority ended. She cared where people stopped resisting. The trouble had started 2 years earlier, when Halcyon Development began building luxury townhomes east of my property. Their survey crews appeared first, then concrete trucks, then stone pillars and polished signs promising private living, elevated. My farmhouse sat between their new construction and the county road. To me, it was home. To them, it was a bottleneck. My grandfather, Walter Caldwell, had built the house in 1968 after returning from Vietnam. He poured the foundation with 2 friends from his unit and framed the walls using oak cut from the back acreage. Above the fireplace, he carved Caldwell into the center beam. When I was a boy, I used to run my fingers through those letters while he drank coffee beside me. "Land remembers who cared for it," he would say. I thought it was just something old men said when they wanted children to listen. Standing in that wreckage, I finally understood. The property held everything my family had left behind. My grandmother's rose garden still bordered the eastern wall, though one excavator track had crushed half the plants into the soil. My father's workbench had been dragged from the garage and snapped through the middle. A cabinet door lay face down in the mud, one brass hinge still attached. I stepped over a broken floor joist and found the outline of the old kitchen. That was where my mother taught me to read blueprints, where my father signed my first union apprenticeship form, where my grandfather spent his final Christmas, wrapped in a wool blanket while snow pressed against the windows. Vanessa's heels clicked across the concrete behind me. "You should try to see this as an opportunity," she said. I turned slowly. She gestured toward the empty space with one manicured hand. The board has already received interest from a developer. This lot could finally become part of a proper entrance corridor. There it was. Not public safety, not structural danger. Corridor. You had a buyer before you demolished the house. Her fingers tightened around her phone. I said there was interest. You said the board had already received it. Her smile remained, but the warmth disappeared. You're upset, Ethan. That's understandable. People like Vanessa loved that word. Upset. Turned evidence into emotion. It made anger sound irrational and theft sound complicated. I stepped closer. How did you know I was coming back Monday? For the first time, she didn't answer immediately. The excavator idled behind her, its engine vibrating through the ground. I must have heard you mention it. I never told you. Her eyes moved toward the foreman. Only for a second. But I saw it. Someone had given her my schedule. Someone had made sure the house would be gone before I returned. Vanessa recovered and reached into her handbag. She removed a business card embossed with the Halcyon development logo. If you cooperate, she said, this can still end favorably. The metallic taste of anger filled my mouth. I took the card, not because I was considering her offer, because fingerprints, names, and phone numbers were all evidence. Then I pulled out my phone and began photographing the rubble. Every track, every company logo, every broken wall, every surviving object. Vanessa watched me in silence. Her smile faded one fraction at a time. The house was gone. But demolition leaves records. Machines have operators. Developers issue contracts. And people who believe they have already won always leave something behind. Vanessa had been preparing to take my land long before the excavator touched the first wall. I proved that 3 hours later. By then, the crew had shut down for the day. Yellow caution tape snapped in the evening wind, and the last sunlight turned the dust above the foundation orange. I sat inside my truck with the doors locked. My father's hammer rested beside me. My grandfather's tin box sat across my knees. The latch was stiff with rust. I worked it loose with the edge of my truck key until it finally opened with a dry metallic click. The smell that rose from inside took me back 30 years. Old paper, machine oil, cedar from my grandfather's basement office. On top was a faded photograph of Walter Caldwell standing beside the unfinished farmhouse in 1968. White t-shirt, mud on his boots, one hand resting on the first oak support beam. On the back, he had written 3 words, "Never sell east." I turned toward the passenger window. The eastern edge of my property ran directly beside Willow Creek's stone entrance and Halcyon's unfinished townhomes. It was the only place wide enough for a second access lane. The corridor Vanessa had mentioned. The land she wanted. My phone rang before I could inspect the rest of the box. County Code Enforcement. A man introduced himself as Harold Pierce, Senior Building Inspector. His voice was smooth and careful, the kind of voice designed to sound official without saying anything useful. Mr. Caldwell, I understand there was some confusion at the site today. Someone demolished my home. A pause. The structure was declared an immediate safety hazard. By whom? An independent engineer. My house passed inspection in May. Conditions can change. In 3 months. Another pause. You'll need to file an appeal through the county review process. I unfolded the demolition order Vanessa had handed me. Harold Pierce's name was printed beneath the county seal. I'm looking at an authorization with your signature. His breathing changed. Only slightly. Then you already have the relevant documentation. Did you inspect my house? I'm not discussing an active enforcement matter over the phone. The line went dead. I stared at the screen. In my experience, innocent people usually wanted to explain. Harold Pierce wanted distance. 10 minutes later, a black pickup stopped across the road. Daniel Mercer climbed out carrying 2 coffees. Daniel was 64, retired from the Postal Service, and had lived opposite our property since I was 12. His white beard moved in the wind as he stared at the rubble. I'm sorry, Ethan. He handed me a cup. The coffee smelled burnt and strong. When did they start? I asked. Tuesday morning. I had returned Wednesday. They fenced the place off Sunday, he continued. Surveyors were here before that. Before I left? He nodded. 2 days before. My grip tightened around the paper cup. Vanessa had started measuring the property while I was still sleeping inside the house. Did anyone try to contact me? I called twice. Daniel pulled out his phone and showed me the call log. Both calls had gone to voicemail. No messages had appeared on my phone. I figured you were somewhere with bad reception, he said. Then I saw Vanessa here with the inspector. He opened a video. The footage shook slightly, filmed through his kitchen window, but the image was clear. Vanessa stood in my driveway beside Harold Pierce. A third man wore a navy blazer and held a rolled set of plans. Behind them, survey stakes formed a straight line from the county road through my front yard. The man pointed toward the house. Vanessa laughed. Even through the closed window, I recognized the sound. Who is he? I asked. Owen Price, Daniel said. Regional Director for Halcyon Development. On the video, Owen unrolled the plans across the hood of Harold's county vehicle. Vanessa tapped the page. Then she pointed toward my kitchen. Daniel zoomed in. The plans carried a title across the top. Willow Creek Phase 4 Access Expansion. My house stood directly in the marked corridor. The document was dated 8 months earlier. 8 months before anyone called the structure unsafe. The wind pushed a strip of insulation across the yard. It caught on my grandmother's damaged rose trellis and fluttered there like a white flag. Vanessa had expected me to return after the house was gone. After the documents were processed. After the land had been reduced to an empty lot and a negotiation. She had planned the timing, the buyer, the pressure, even the false warnings. But she had made one mistake. She believed no one was watching. Daniel had recorded the beginning. And somewhere inside the tin box on my lap was the reason my grandfather had warned me never to sell east. By Thursday morning, the county had already decided the truth was inconvenient. I walked into the code enforcement office carrying a black binder thick enough to stop a door. Inside were roof invoices, electrical permits, foundation reports, tax records, photographs, and the demolition order signed by Harold Pierce. The lobby smelled like burnt coffee and industrial cleaner. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. A printer coughed paper behind the reception desk while a wall clock clicked through 43 minutes of waiting. Then Harold opened his office door. Mr. Caldwell. He didn't offer his hand. His eyes dropped immediately to the binder. Harold Pierce was in his late 50s, with white hair combed flat and a navy tie knotted so tightly it seemed to hold his entire expression in place. He motioned toward a chair. I stayed standing. He sat anyway. You've assembled quite a file, he said. I had a house yesterday. His mouth tightened. I placed the forged delivery receipt on his desk. My grandfather signed for this 6 years after he died. Harold glanced at it for less than a second. Certified mail errors happen. Dead men don't make clerical errors. That issue would fall under the Postal Service. I opened the binder and slid my May inspection report toward him. County seal. Electrical approval. Foundation reinforcement. His department's signatures. This says the structure was safe. Conditions can change. In 3 months. Ground movement. Moisture intrusion. Hidden structural fatigue. I placed photographs beside the report. Fresh roof. Level floors. Steel piers beneath the western wall. Who inspected it before demolition? An independent engineer. Name. That information is part of an active review. You signed the order. I relied on the materials provided. By Vanessa Whitmore? His eyes lifted. There it was. A reaction too small for most people to notice. I noticed. I took out my phone and played Daniel's video. Vanessa. Harold. Owen Price. Survey stakes cutting through my yard 2 days before I left town. The Phase 4 access plans spread across the hood of Harold's county vehicle. The office seemed to shrink around us. When the video ended, the vent above his desk rattled in the silence. Harold leaned back. That proves nothing. It proves you were surveying my property before the emergency existed. I conduct site visits. With a developer? Mr. Price was evaluating infrastructure on private land. Harold reached for my phone, pulled it away. His hand stopped in the air. For 1 second, the polished official disappeared. What remained was a frightened man who knew evidence had survived. Then the office door opened. Vanessa walked in without knocking. Cream jacket, gold earrings, perfect blonde hair. Her perfume filled the room before she spoke. "Ethan," she said softly, "I was told you might come by." I looked at Harold. He stared down at the inspection report. Neither of them seemed surprised to see the other. Vanessa placed a leather folder on his desk. The HOA's counsel prepared the updated nuisance findings. Harold nodded too quickly. I let the silence stretch until Vanessa turned toward me. "You shouldn't be handling this alone," she said. "Your legal exposure is becoming serious." "My legal exposure?" "Unsafe debris, interference with an authorized demolition, trespassing inside a condemned area." She made each threat sound like helpful advice. Then she opened the folder. Contract waited inside. Voluntary land transfer agreement. My address appeared at the top. The offer was $180,000. Less than half the value of the land. "You already prepared a sale agreement. The HOA is offering you a clean resolution. You destroyed my house yesterday, and now we're trying to prevent further loss." I turned the pages. Halcyon Development was listed as the future assignee. There was no mention of an emergency hazard. No mention of public safety. Only the transfer of my eastern boundary for a new entrance corridor. I looked at Vanessa. "You had the buyer ready before the excavator arrived." Her smile narrowed. "This project benefits the entire community. It benefits Halcyon. It benefits property values. My property isn't yours to value." She pushed a silver pen across the desk. "Sign today, and the HOA will waive the demolition and cleanup assessment." Harold kept his eyes on the papers. That told me he already knew about the offer. They had built the whole thing as a pressure system. Destroy the house, block the owner, create fees, offer less than the land was worth, then call surrender a solution. I picked up the agreement. Vanessa's shoulders relaxed. She thought the weight of the rubble had finally reached me. I tore the contract in half. The sound was sharp enough to make Harold flinch. Vanessa did not move, but her fingers tightened around the edge of the desk until her knuckles turned white. "I'm going to ask once," I said. "Who authorized the demolition?" Harold stood. "This meeting is over." Vanessa gathered the torn pages slowly. Then she stepped close enough for me to smell mint beneath her perfume. "You have no house, Ethan," she whispered. "Soon you won't have the land." I closed my binder. She believed the building had been my only defense. But people in my profession understand demolition better than most. When someone tears away the walls, they expose the wiring. They reveal the beams. And sometimes, if they dig deep enough, they uncover the exact point where the whole structure can be brought down. The first lawyer told me to take the money. His office smelled like lemon polish, old carpet, and the expensive coffee cooling beside his keyboard. Framed settlement checks covered the wall behind him, each one positioned to make surrender look like success. He read my binder for 20 minutes. Then he closed it. "Your house is gone," he said. "That changes the economics." "The economics?" "County immunity, HOA insurance, expert witnesses, discovery costs. You could spend 2 years proving they acted illegally and still recover less than the offer. They forged my dead grandfather's signature. Can you prove who signed it?" "I can prove Walter Caldwell didn't." He sighed and folded his hands over his stomach. "Courts don't punish outrage, Mr. Caldwell. They weigh evidence." I stared at him. The rubble was evidence. The forged receipt was evidence. Daniel's video was evidence. But what he meant was simple. The other side had more money. He slid the torn transfer agreement back across the desk. "Ask them to raise the offer." I left without shaking his hand. The second attorney wanted a $25,000 retainer before reading the first page. The third ended our consultation the moment I mentioned Halcyon Development. His firm had represented them on a zoning dispute 5 years earlier. By Friday morning, Vanessa had turned the land itself against me. A chain-link fence appeared overnight around the entire property. Bright orange signs hung every 12 feet. Condemned. No trespassing. County authority. My name appeared nowhere. I arrived before sunrise and found a private security guard sitting inside a black sedan near the gate. The engine was running. Exhaust drifted low across the gravel. He stepped out when I approached. "You can't enter. I own the property. Not according to my work order." I showed him my driver's license, tax record, and deed copy. He barely looked. "Call the number on the sign." The number belonged to Willow Creek's management office. Vanessa answered on the second ring. "Good morning, Ethan. You hired security to keep me off my own land. The site is unsafe. You created the unsafe condition. That's your interpretation." Behind the fence, rainwater had collected inside the broken foundation. Pieces of roofing floated in the muddy pit. My grandmother's damaged rose trellis leaned toward the rubble, half buried under insulation. "I need to recover personal property. You may submit an itemized request." "You demolished the inventory." Her voice softened. "Sign the transfer agreement, and this all ends." I hung up. At noon, 2 sheriff's deputies visited Daniel Mercer. Vanessa had accused him of harassment and illegal surveillance for filming from his own kitchen window. They did not arrest him, but they warned him that continued involvement could create civil complications. Daniel called me afterward. His voice sounded smaller. "My daughter wants me out of this," he said. "She's afraid they'll put a lien on my house next." I looked across the motel parking lot at trucks moving along the interstate. "I understand. I'm sorry, Ethan. You already did more than anyone else." That was how Vanessa controlled people. Not with one dramatic act. With pressure. A warning here. A fee there. One frightened neighbor at a time. That evening, I checked into room 214 at a motel beside the highway. The room smelled like bleach, old cigarettes, and damp carpet. The air conditioner rattled every time the compressor kicked on. I spread my papers across the bed. The county had rejected my emergency appeal. The sheriff's office called the demolition a civil dispute. My insurance company denied temporary housing because the destruction had been carried out under an official government order. Every door led back to the same locked hallway. At 9:16 p.m., an email arrived from Willow Creek HOA, Notice of Debris Removal Assessment. They were charging me $87,000 to remove the remains of the house they had destroyed. Payment due in 10 days. Failure to pay would trigger a lien against the property. I read it 3 times. For the first time since I returned, the anger left me. What remained was exhaustion. Heavy, cold, quiet. Vanessa had taken the house, blocked the land, frightened my witness, and turned every local office into another weapon. She was not trying to defeat me in court. She was trying to make sure I could never afford to reach one. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my grandfather's tin box. The wax-wrapped documents were still inside. I had been so focused on the forged notices that I had barely examined them. One folded paper was thicker than the others, secured with a faded red ribbon. Across the front, in Walter Caldwell's handwriting, were 6 words. "For when they come for the land." The air conditioner rattled once more. I reached for the ribbon. The ribbon snapped with almost no resistance. Inside was a deed I had never seen before. The paper was thick, yellowed at the edges, and stamped with 3 county seals from 3 different decades. My grandfather's name appeared on the first page, but the document itself was older than he was. Caldwell Agricultural Preservation Agreement. Recorded in 1949. I carried it beneath the motel lamp and read the opening paragraph twice. Then a third time. My great-grandfather had granted the county a narrow drainage easement along the eastern boundary after a flood destroyed the old state road. In exchange, the county recorded a permanent restriction protecting the rest of the property from annexation, private condemnation, or absorption into any residential association without written consent from a Caldwell heir. My consent. Not Vanessa's. Not Harold Pierce's. Mine. Halfway down the second page was another clause. Any use of the easement beyond drainage and emergency maintenance required written approval from the landowner. If a private organization expanded, paved, or commercially developed that corridor without authorization, the owner could demand immediate removal and restrict further access. I leaned back in the chair. Willow Creek's stone entrance crossed that strip of land. So did the Lane Halcyon plan to widen. They had been treating a drainage easement like a permanent roadway. The polished signs, the landscaped median, the access corridor Vanessa wanted badly enough to destroy my house. None of it worked without my signature. Under the deed was a hand-drawn survey map. Red pencil marked the original drainage channel. Blue ink traced the modern Willow Creek entrance directly across it. At the bottom, my grandfather had written, "They will pretend the road belongs to them. It does not." A knock struck the motel door. 3 hard taps. I froze. The clock read 10:02 p.m. I folded the deed beneath my jacket and crossed the room quietly. "Who is it?" "Rebecca Sloan." I didn't recognize the name. "Who sent you?" "Daniel Mercer." I opened the door 2 inches, leaving the chain attached. A woman in her late 30s stood beneath the flickering walkway light. Dark suit, rain on her shoulders, leather case in one hand. She held up a business card. Property litigation, municipal fraud, eminent domain. "Mr. Mercer sent me the demolition video," she said. Then he sent the forged delivery receipt. I removed the chain. Rebecca entered, looked at the papers spread across the bed, and stopped. "You found something." I handed her the deed. She read without speaking. Her eyes moved faster as she reached the easement restrictions. Then she looked up. "Does anyone else know you have this?" "No." "Good." That single word changed the temperature of the room. She placed the deed carefully on the desk and opened her case. Inside were corporate records, campaign disclosures, zoning applications, and payment reports. Halcyon Development donated $40,000 to Councilman Robert Pierce's re-election committee last year, she said. "Pierce, Harold's brother." She placed another document beside the deed. "Vanessa's husband owns a consulting company. Halcyon paid it $260,000 6 weeks ago." The rain tapped against the window. Rebecca added one final sheet. "A preliminary site plan for Willow Creek Phase 4. My property was shaded green. Future grand entrance and commercial corridor. The plan had been created 8 months before anyone declared my home unsafe." "They didn't demolish your house because it was dangerous," Rebecca said. "They demolished it because Halcyon's financing deadline expires next month." I stared at the map. 8 months of planning. 7 days of execution. 1 dead man's signature. Rebecca tapped the deed. "This blocks their expansion. It may also prove they have been using part of your property beyond the easement's legal purpose." "So I can shut the entrance?" "Not yet," she said. "First, we prove what they did. Then we let a judge decide how much it costs them." She lowered her voice. "From this moment forward, you tell no one about the deed." "What do we do?" "We let them believe you're desperate." She gathered the records into neat stacks. "Every threat, every invoice, every lie. We preserve it. And then," her expression turned cold, "then we make them repeat those lies under oath." I looked at my grandfather's handwriting. "For when they come for the land." He had known someone would eventually look at our home and see only profit. Vanessa thought she had left me with rubble, debt, and nowhere to sleep. What she had really done was dig deep enough for me to find the one document her entire project could not survive. For the next 6 days, I behaved like a man preparing to surrender. Rebecca called it controlled weakness. Vanessa called it progress. I stopped arguing with the county. I stopped demanding access to the property. I sent Willow Creek a short email asking whether the transfer offer was still available. Vanessa replied 9 minutes later. Of course it was. People reveal the most when they believe the ending already belongs to them. Rebecca filed an emergency preservation motion in district court. It required Willow Creek, Halcyon Development, and county code enforcement to retain every email, inspection report, work order, payment record, photograph, and demolition communication connected to my property. Harold Pierce received the order at 8:12 Monday morning. At 9:04, someone inside his department began deleting files. They did not know the county server created automatic backups every 30 minutes. By noon, Rebecca had proof of evidence destruction. The first crack had opened. I spent the next 2 days rebuilding the demolition from the outside inward. The excavator belonged to Dalton Site Services. Its foreman, Caleb Ross, agreed to meet me at a truck stop 20 miles outside town. We sat in a corner booth beneath a buzzing red sign while the smell of fryer grease and burnt coffee clung to the air. Caleb kept both hands wrapped around his cup. "We were told the house had been abandoned for years," he said. "I slept there the night before I left." His eyes dropped. "I know that now." He handed me copies of the work order, crew logs, and text messages Vanessa had sent directly to his phone. One message was dated 3 days before I left for Nashville. "Complete demolition before owner returns." Another came from Owen Price. "Preserve eastern markers until survey team confirms corridor width." They had not simply torn down my home. They had measured the land while doing it. Caleb rubbed his jaw. "There's something else." His company required operators to record every demolition after a lawsuit on another job. A small camera inside the cab captured the work area. Caleb also wore a body camera whenever a property owner might dispute instructions. Vanessa had ordered him to disable both. He had left them running. We watched the footage on his tablet. My farmhouse stood beneath the gray morning sky, windows intact, roof level, walls unbroken. Vanessa arrived before sunrise. Harold Pierce walked through the building without taking a single measurement. Owen Price spread development plans across my grandmother's kitchen table. Then Vanessa climbed onto the excavator step and leaned through the open cab window. "Start with the kitchen," she said. "Once the structure is gone, Caldwell won't have the money to fight." The microphone caught every word. The booth seemed to go silent around us. Rebecca made encrypted copies before we left. One went to the court. One went to the state attorney general. One went to a private evidence server. The original stayed with Caleb's attorney. 2 days later, I attended a private HOA meeting and placed my phone face-up on the table. Rebecca had confirmed that state law allowed one-party consent recording. Vanessa believed I had come to negotiate. The clubhouse smelled like cinnamon candles and new carpet. Owen sat beside her. 3 board members avoided looking at me. Vanessa placed a revised agreement in front of my chair. $250,000. "You have made this unnecessarily difficult," she said. "But the board is willing to be generous." I turned the pages slowly. Buried near the end was a release protecting Willow Creek, Halcyon, county officials, and every individual involved from civil liability. "You expected lawsuits," I said. "It is standard language." "No, it is escape language." Owen shifted in his seat. Vanessa leaned toward me. "Take the money, Ethan. Halcyon closes financing next week. After that, none of this can be undone." There it was. The deadline, the motive, the admission. I picked up the silver pen. Everyone at the table relaxed. Then I wrote 4 words across the signature line. "Property is not for sale." Vanessa's face lost color. "You are making a serious mistake." I stood and closed the folder. "No," I said. "You made yours before the machine ever started." That afternoon, Rebecca filed the deed, the survey map, the server backups, Caleb's footage, and my recording under seal. At 4:37 p.m., Judge Eleanor Grant issued a temporary restraining order freezing construction on Phase 4 and prohibiting the transfer or destruction of any related records. Sheriff's deputies served the order at the HOA office before sunset. Vanessa called me 17 times. I answered the last one. "What did you do?" she whispered. I stood outside the fence surrounding my ruined home while the orange warning signs snapped in the wind. "I let you keep talking," I said. Then I ended the call. The next time Vanessa spoke, she would be under oath. The courtroom was quiet enough for me to hear Vanessa's bracelet tapping against the witness stand. Click, pause, click. The sound followed every answer she tried to control. She wore a navy suit instead of cream that morning. Her blonde hair was pinned back. Her makeup was precise, but the skin beneath it looked pale. Harold Pierce sat behind the defense table with his attorney. Owen Price sat beside him, staring at the sealed evidence boxes as if they contained explosives. In a way, they did. Judge Eleanor Grant looked over her glasses. Rebecca rose from our table and approached the witness stand. Mrs. Whitmore, did you authorize the demolition of Ethan Caldwell's home? Vanessa folded her hands. I authorized an emergency safety response based on county findings. Rebecca nodded once. Your Honor, permission to play Exhibit 42. The courtroom monitor lit up. My farmhouse appeared beneath a gray morning sky, still standing, windows intact, roof straight, no collapsed walls, no emergency. Vanessa appeared on screen beside the excavator. She climbed onto the steel step and leaned through the open cab window. Start with the kitchen, her recorded voice said. Once the structure is gone, Caldwell won't have the money to fight. The video stopped. No one moved. The bracelet stopped tapping. Rebecca turned toward the witness stand. Was that your voice? Vanessa swallowed. The recording lacks context. What context makes that statement lawful? Her attorney stood. Objection. Overruled, Judge Grant said. Vanessa looked toward Harold. He looked down. That was the first moment their alliance began to collapse. Rebecca displayed the certified mail receipt. Walter Caldwell's name appeared across the screen in thick black ink. Who signed this? I don't know. You submitted it as proof that notice had been delivered. Our management company handled the mailing. Rebecca placed the postal records beside it. The tracking number belonged to a package delivered 3 counties away. No carrier had visited my property that day. Then came the deleted county emails. Harold Pierce had written to Vanessa 8 days before the demolition. Engineering review incomplete. Proceeding now creates significant exposure. Vanessa's response was shorter. Owen says financing cannot wait. A murmur moved through the room. Judge Grant struck the bench once. Silence. Rebecca called Harold next. He walked to the witness stand like every step required permission. Did you personally find Ethan Caldwell's house in danger of imminent collapse? Rebecca asked. No. Did any licensed engineer complete such a finding before demolition? Harold's jaw tightened. No. Then why did you sign the order? He looked toward Owen. Then Vanessa. I was told the project had already been approved. By whom? Councilman Pierce's office. Mr. Price. Mrs. Whitmore. Owen pushed back from the table. This is absurd. His chair scraped sharply across the floor. Judge Grant's voice cut through him. Sit down, Mr. Price. He did. Then Rebecca introduced the 1949 Preservation Agreement. The faded county seals filled the monitor. She explained the restriction against HOA annexation, the limited drainage easement, and the requirement for a Caldwell heir's written consent before any private road expansion. My signature had never been given. She overlaid the old survey with Halcyon's Phase 4 plan. The proposed entrance lane ran directly across the protected strip. The truth became visible in one red line. They had not demolished a dangerous house. They had removed an obstacle to a development deadline. Rebecca played my recording from the HOA meeting. Vanessa's voice filled the room. Halcyon closes financing next week. After that, none of this can be undone. Then came the final blow. Bank records showed Halcyon's payment to Vanessa's husband. Campaign contributions to Harold's brother. Invoices issued before the supposed inspection. The entire plan had existed months before I left town. Vanessa's control finally broke. That house was worthless, she snapped. The project would have benefited everyone. Her attorney closed his eyes. Rebecca remained still. Worthless to whom? Vanessa stared at her. Too late. The damages hearing lasted 2 more days. $850,000 for replacement and restoration. $650,000 for destroyed property, displacement, and loss of use. $1.5 million for fraud, conspiracy, and civil rights violations. $5 million in punitive damages. Judge Grant read the total without raising her voice. $8 million. Vanessa made a thin sound in the back of her throat. The court froze the disputed project assets, ordered immediate restoration of my property rights, and referred the evidence to state and federal investigators. That afternoon, deputies removed the chain from my gate. The orange condemned signs came down one by one. Vanessa passed me outside the courthouse beside two investigators. She stopped. "You destroyed everything," she whispered. I looked at the deed in my hand, then at the woman who had mistaken paperwork for power. "No," I said. "You did." I held up the forged receipt. "I just kept the evidence." 18 months later, the first sound on Caldwell Road was not an excavator tearing something down. It was my father's red-handled hammer driving the first nail into the new porch. The strike rang across the property, sharp and clean, followed by the low hum of saws and the crunch of work boots over fresh gravel. Cedar dust drifted through the morning light. Coffee steamed from paper cups balanced on stacks of lumber. I stood where my grandfather's kitchen had once been and watched the farmhouse rise again. We rebuilt it on the original foundation. Same white siding, same deep front porch, same oak beam above the fireplace. The architects suggested something modern. Halcyon's remaining investors offered to buy the land for 3 times its appraised value after the judgment. I refused both. Some things are not valuable because they can be sold. They are valuable because someone tried to erase them and failed. The $8 million judgment was divided among Halcyon Development, Willow Creek Estates, its insurance carrier, and the individuals responsible. The civil ruling triggered 3 separate criminal investigations. Harold Pierce pleaded guilty to falsifying public records and conspiracy to commit property fraud. He lost his position, his pension, and 18 months of his freedom in county jail. Owen Price was indicted on federal wire fraud and bribery charges after investigators traced Halcyon's payments through shell companies in 2 states. Vanessa fought longer than anyone. She blamed Harold, then Owen, then the board, then her own husband. The excavator footage blamed her better. She was convicted of forgery, fraud, criminal destruction of property, and conspiracy. The judge sentenced her to 7 years and ordered the sale of her assets to satisfy part of the judgment. The white Lexus disappeared first, then the lake house, then the cream-colored home she had once used as proof that she understood property values better than everyone else. Willow Creek dissolved the old board 2 weeks after the civil ruling. Daniel Mercer joined the temporary oversight committee, though he complained about every meeting and refused to wear a tie. The new board rescinded 73 improper fines, refunded thousands of dollars to residents, and published every financial record online. That was when the stories started coming out. A retired teacher fined for installing a wheelchair ramp. A widower threatened over peeling paint while he recovered from surgery. A young family charged for a fence they had never built. Vanessa had ruled through isolation. One warning, one lien, one frightened neighbor at a time. Once people compared documents, her authority collapsed. The community did not become perfect. It became honest. On the day we finished the house, I climbed the porch steps carrying the red-handled hammer. The shallow cuts in the grip still fit my fingers. I drove one final nail into the restored oak beam beneath the Caldwell name. Then I placed my grandfather's tin box inside a steel safe behind the fireplace. The 1949 agreement went inside. So did Daniel's video, the forged receipt, the demolition order, a photograph of the rubble, and the business card Vanessa handed me on the day she believed I had nothing left. I kept all of it, not because I expected another fight, because land remembers who cared for it, but people sometimes need evidence. Outside, workers lowered a wooden sign between 2 stone posts at the entrance. Private property. Beneath it, in smaller letters, were the words I chose myself. Justice rebuilt this home. I stepped back and looked at the finished farmhouse. Fresh paint, clean windows, my grandmother's roses replanted along the porch. The afternoon wind carried the smell of cedar, soil, and warm asphalt from the road. For the first time in months, nothing sounded broken. Vanessa believed power meant acting before anyone could stop her. She believed a county seal could turn theft into law and an excavator could destroy every reason I had to fight. She was wrong. Power was not the person holding the demolition order. It was the truth that remained after the dust settled. Justice was not loud when it arrived. It waited in a rusted box. It waited in server backups, camera footage, bank records, and a dead man's signature. Then, when every lie was finally on the record, it signed its name for $8 million. The house still stands there today. So does the sign. And whenever I hear that hammer strike the oak beam, I remember the lesson Vanessa learned too late. You can demolish wood. You can shatter glass. You can bury a family's history beneath concrete and call it progress. But when the foundation belongs to the truth, sooner or later, everything gets rebuilt.